As we'll see, in Michael Porter's 5 forces model, there's a strong focus on the importance of the price sensitivity of buyers. So it's worth considering in some detail what happens if that price sensitivity changes. So what I'm going to do here is consider the case where the demand for the firm's product becomes more price sensitive. Now we can just use that very same analysis to also tell us what would happen if somehow we could make demand less price sensitive. So what I want to show is that if demand becomes more price sensitive, that's going to be bad for profits. So let's consider a specific numerical example. This is the example that I've used earlier, and it's one in which we see the familiar picture in which we've got a linear or straight line demand curve, the associated marginal revenue curve. We have information about marginal costs. We want to produce where we're maximizing profits, that is up to the point where marginal revenue just equals marginal cost. Remember, anywhere before that point, we can add more to our revenues than we add to our costs if we lower our price and produce and sell a little bit more. So that's why it makes sense to go up to this level of output, and the demand curve tells us the highest price that we could charge to sell that total amount to our customers. And in this particular case, the price is $7.50 and the quantity is 4.5 units per day. Now, before I continue, I want to just introduce a concept that's going to be very useful really throughout the course. I want to consider this difference between the price and the marginal cost of production. So in this case, marginal cost is $4 and we're charging a price of $7.50. So that difference is $3.50. That's the extra amount that we're getting per unit sold above marginal costs. So marginal cost, remember, is just telling us how much do we add to our costs to produce one more unit of output. So this difference between price and marginal cost, we're going to call profit contribution. And if we just figure out what that profit contribution is for the 4.5 units that we're selling, you can see it's just going to be the amount per unit multiplied by the number of units that we sell. In other words, it's going to be the area of that rectangle there that I've colored in yellow. If you work it out, that turns out to be $15.75. Well, let's just think for a moment how that's contributing to profits. Remember that marginal cost comes from thinking about how our variable costs are changing as we produce an additional unit of output. But our total costs consist of variable costs and fixed costs. We don't see fixed costs here, but they're kind of hiding in the background. So if we can sell our product for something above marginal costs, whatever we're getting above marginal costs is contributing to covering some or all or more than covering our fixed costs. So this profit contribution tells us something about our revenues that are in excess of our variable costs. Just to put that another way, the total variable cost of producing 4.5 units is just going to be $4 per unit multiplied by the 4.5 units that we're producing. In other words, that would be the area of this rectangle here. But you can see that our total revenues, price times quantity, is the area of this larger rectangle, which I'm roughly outlining here. So this profit contribution is the difference between our total revenues and our total variable cost. So that's what's left over to help to cover our fixed costs. So we're going to focus on profit contribution here because that'll tell us something about how profits are changing if the nature of demand changes. So the question we want to ask is, how do our decisions change if demand becomes more price sensitive? In other words, more elastic. What's going to happen to price? What's going to happen to how much we produce? And what happens to our profits? Well, let's consider a more elastic demand curve. So I've constructed an example here, shown in red, and we can see that that demand curve is more elastic than the old one. Why is that? Well, let's just start at a spot where both curves intersect, or they have a common point. We can see that if the price goes up by $1, let's say from $5 to $6, in the case of the original demand curve, shown in black, the quantity demanded would fall by 1 unit. The more elastic curve, shown by this red line, shows us that the same price increase of $1 results in a quantity demanded that is 2 units less, not 1 unit less as before. So it must be the case that the red line is showing us demand that is more responsive to a price change. Well, let's just see what that means in terms of the profit maximizing price and quantity. We can see that marginal revenue and marginal cost are now equal at an output of 5. And the highest price that we can sell 5 units for is $6, according to our new demand curve. So we can see that as demand became more elastic, we had to reduce our price. We ended up selling a bit more, but if we work out what our profit contribution is, if I just clean up the diagram a little bit there, we can see that the profit contribution is smaller than it was before. Here you can easily see that the profit contribution is 10. So for each unit that we sell for $6, we have a profit contribution of $2 for a total of 10 for the 10 units that we're selling. So, just to summarize, as demand became more elastic, we had to lower our price and profit contribution fell. If profit contribution fell, then it must be the case that total profits fell as well. So the firm is worse off if demand became more elastic. Let's just summarize some conclusions. That greater price elasticity of demand makes it more difficult for the firm to raise price, because if it's going to raise its price, it's going to lose more sales, lose more customers. And as I showed in that specific example, profits are going to be lower. Well, we can use these ideas to conclude that any strategy that we can come up with that's going to reduce the price sensitivity of buyers could be profitable to the firm. So next, I think we need to consider some of what those strategies might be.